This is the perfect time to understand what is React. My name is Harsha Vardhan. I am the UI expert and working as module lead, and also I am the corporate instructor and also famous Udemy instructor. In this lecture, we are going to understand quick introduction to React. So what is React? React is the JavaScript library to build dynamic and interactive user interfaces that executes faster. So like I said, React is a JavaScript library. It is not a framework. So what makes a difference between the framework and library? A framework provides the complete solution for creating the front-end applications. But when you talk about React, being it as a library, it is the lightweight. It provides the support for building only view, that means only the user interfaces for your application. But it is not necessarily a drawback. It provides proper mechanism to build user interfaces and to make them interactive with the user. That means you can accept inputs from the user and also provide dynamic information to the user. That's how the real-world applications work. For example, you take Facebook. It provides all the posts in the feed page and also lets the user to create their own posts. So this kind of user interactions can be created by using React. React was developed by Facebook in 2011 and it is mainly used for development of single-page applications. So what is a single-page application? A single-page application is an application that renders small pieces of user interface and make the complete application. In React, you can actually build reusable UI components. Each component is the representation of a meaningful page in your user interface. For example, in a modern application, you have a navigation bar and the sidebar as well as the page content. Here, each of these can be represented as a piece of UI, and those are represented as components in the code. And these components are by default reusable. That means you can display the navigation bar wherever required in the application. That means, for example, if you create a navbar as a UI component, you can reuse the same navbar in multiple pages wherever required in your big application. So by default, UI components are reusable pieces which consists of the design logic as well as the programming logic. Here, the design logic is written in the form of HTML and the programming logic is written in the form of JavaScript. And by default, these components are arranged in hierarchy that is called virtual DOM. So a virtual DOM is the hierarchy of the components which imitate the real DOM of the browser. When you update any changes in the virtual DOM, React internally compares the virtual DOM and real DOM, and only the changes made in the virtual DOM will be updated into the real DOM, and the same appears on the browser. We will understand more about components and virtual DOM in the next lecture. But how to create the components? React supports a new syntax called JSX, which stands for JavaScript with XML. That means the developer can actually use all the concepts of JavaScript along with XML within the same program. Here, the HTML tags are written in the form of XML. That means here HTML is being case sensitive, and every tag should have opening and closing, or they must be self-closed. These are the features of React. What makes it exciting about React is that React is the most popular front-end library or framework which is very competitive to the other frameworks such as Angular or Vue.js. But often React is compared with Angular. So you might have a question such that, what is the difference between Angular and React? Well, Angular is the framework, but React is the UI library. So React, being as a UI library, it provides sophisticated solution to make the UI interactive and dynamic. But Angular provides much more beyond this. In addition to UI, Angular provides necessary features to create routing and make REST API calls in Angular applications. So Angular provides much more beyond React.js because React sticks to only Vue. It is not necessarily a drawback, but you can actually extend, that means use third-party tools in React in order to use the features such as routing or making REST API calls. Angular forces us to build only single-page applications. Suppose if you want multi-page applications in your project, it is very difficult or sometimes becomes impossible in case of Angular. But React can be used for either single-page or multi-page applications. So before development of your application, you need not worry whether it is a single-page application or multi-page application. Eventually, in the middle of the development also, you can convert the single-page application into multi-page application by creating multiple HTML files in React. But the same can be most problematic in case of Angular. Angular directly operates based on real browser DOM. That means when you update a value of a property in Angular, the same will be directly reflected in the real DOM rather than first updating in the virtual DOM. But in case of React, it directly works based on virtual DOM, and every time when you make any updates in the virtual DOM, for example, if you modify any property value in virtual DOM, it actually compares the virtual DOM and real browser DOM and updates the real DOM only for the specific change, instead of overwriting the complete DOM. So this makes React applications work faster. I will talk about components and virtual DOM in the next lecture. And another difference between Angular and React is Angular by default supports two-way binding. That means it can actually read inputs from the user and also provides state data to the user. But when it comes to React, it by default supports only one-way binding. It officially doesn't support two-way binding. It actually can render state to the user but cannot read the inputs from the user. But however, developer can manually read the values of the text boxes and update the same in the state. In that way, it can become two-way binding. Anyways, we will demonstrate the binding in the further sections. So these are all the differences between Angular and React. This is a good time to learn React, and necessarily you need not know Angular because we will actually demonstrate all the concepts of React. So you don't require any prior knowledge of Angular to understand React. In case if you are not much familiar about ECMAScript 6, don't worry. As a part of the progress, we will understand various concepts of ECMAScript whenever we actually use them in the code. So let's get started with React, and in the next lecture we will understand what is a component actually and how the component hierarchy is formed internally. And after that, we will really start creating the React application to make our hands dirty.